I'm constantly hearing from candidates about, I want to serve the public. It's about serving Michigan. It's not about me. It's about all of you. I hear this constant dribble, but never once do I hear it's about me defending your rights. It's about me defending your liberties. It's about me defending the Constitution. I don't hear that enough. And when you don't hear that out of the very first couple of lines that comes out of their mouth, to me that means they just don't care. So at that point, what's the difference? If I go over a cliff on a bus, do you think I care if the bus has an R or a D painted on the side? I'm still going over. And we've been saying this for 10 years, and it's like, at what point did they get it? But you keep plugging along, because if we walk away, they have it all.
We have a lot to talk about. It's going to be another exciting meeting. This is where the elite meet to eat and they become informed. So, ladies and gentlemen, with that, let's invite our first speaker, dynamic David Dudenhoefer. Dave, come on down.
So yeah, last night, huh? A funny thing happened on the way to Republican victories last night. But no, it's no surprise what happened. I think for many of us, we saw it coming. We just didn't know how bad the bloodbath would be, but it wasn't a terrible bloodbath nationwide, but Michigan was just awful. This was awful what happened. Now, we did manage to hold on, as you know, to the state house by a few seats, and I made the observation, and I made this earlier in the year, that if this is the way it was going to happen, then the few folks that were really actually defending liberty in the state house would actually be sitting in the catbird seat, because their votes would actually mean something now. And as it stands, we actually have, what is it, a 5-seat margin. Yes?
State Senate?
State Senate, State Senate, there's the large advantage, but we've had more of our troubles in the State Senate than we have in the State House. You could make the argument that there's too many of those folks who call themselves Republicans and vote like Democrats. But they're, what the makeup exactly is now and how that's going to go and how that's going to fit into the future over the next few years, we'll have to see. Will the election of Governor-elect Whitmer galvanize Republicans to actually stand for something again, and will they hold the line, or will they behave like they had before? That's going to depend a lot on their character. It's going to depend a lot on the pressure that they get from all of us. And what sort of bills that we're going after. Are we going to be defensive and just wait to see what they throw at us, or are we going to get on offense and demand legislation that's going to advance liberty and take advantage of the opportunity? So I see that as the way that we should go. We should spend the next few months planning out a couple of areas where we want to go on offense and present our ideas and do just that, and force Governor Whitmer into a position where she's going to have to either support ideas rooted in individual liberty, personal freedom, and a respect for the rule of law, or expose herself for what many of us know her to actually be. So we'll see, or at least what she has been when she was in the state Senate, which wasn't very impressive, but you never know. I already found one area this morning where I think I could agree with Governor-elect Whitmer on, and that's expunging the records of people who are sitting in a cage over a victimless crime. Right? So, and that's what you do in situations like this. You find those areas that are consistent with what we believe in, where we can work together and find common ground. Compromise does not mean compromising your principles. It just means working together on those areas that are consistent with our Constitution. I think that's perfectly well. And if she's willing to do something like that, I'm willing to work with her on it. So, but yeah, yesterday was awful, and quite frankly, the Republicans have nobody to blame but themselves. They had it all, and they screwed it up. And I tell you, it's another example of what we've been saying before about not listening to the grassroots, and where money and egos stood at the forefront. Basically, money and ego is the reason why we are sitting in the position we're in. Now, I don't pretend that, a Republican gubernatorial nominee in Pat Colbeck would have done a whole lot better, but I can tell you he would have had the grassroots behind him, because Bill Schuette didn't. And Bill Schuette's been running for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years for governor, 30. Yeah, 30. Some people say 30. Look, I don't want to disparage the man while he's down. People say he's a nice guy, good family guy. I didn't get to know him that well. There were a lot of policy differences, and I'm sure all of you feel the same way. And therefore, he didn't have our physical support, whether boots on the ground or money or what have you. And so that's reflective in what happened, And you look up and down in Michigan. I mean, right now we have got a attorney general who stood on a stage and proclaimed to the world, with her 2 sons behind her, that you shouldn't trust anybody with a penis, and we shouldn't vote for anybody with a penis. And this is now our attorney general. And our Secretary of State is going to do her best impersonation of a Jimmy John's delivery person and promise freaky fast 30 minutes or less service. I don't know, can you get excited about that? We'll see what happens. But certainly, and of course we have Garland Gilchrist, who is one heartbeat away from being a governor. This is a man who, I don't know if he even has the slightest concept of the legislative process. He is now going to be leading the Michigan Senate as our lieutenant governor. This is a little scary to me. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Right now, we have a divided government in the state. And so I see this as an opportunity. It's an opportunity for the grassroots to re-galvanize itself once again. That's all of you. That's people that you know. That's people in the other counties. And get back on offense and get back to hardcore liberty issues. And they didn't listen to us very well before when they had power. Sometimes they listen a little better when they're somewhat out of power. So we'll see what happens. But certainly there needs to be a shakeup in leadership. There's no question about that. I think that's been one of the first things that many people in social media that I've read has been proclaiming, is that a change in leadership is definitely needed. They focused very heavily on fundraising, not much on organizing grassroots, not much on building grassroots. In fact, what they did was complete opposite. They put the grassroots, the true grassroots, into a corner. They formed this cute committee and stuck all the rabble-rousers on that committee and didn't really pay much attention to what they had to say, and just, we'll stick them over here and we'll focus on our business of raising money and building up our egos for all of the people that are in big business, and we're going to put forward these candidates, and we're just going to carry on as business as usual. And we saw what that turned into. So they had it to win, and they lost. So that's kind of a synopsis on the state, and I think that should be pretty obvious to many of us in here. Now, what does that look like going into your conventions in later this month? Do we have the bodies that are galvanized enough to come out and make some changes at the top? Certainly, we have to look at OCRP, or you folks do. That was pretty awful. Oakland County has always been kind of leaning back towards the liberal side. I think that's just demographic changes. There's some things you can help, some things you can't, okay? But certainly the excitement and enthusiasm of the people that are part of that organization has really been, lackluster. And there's been reasons for that. And, look no further than some of your past conventions to see the animosity and the division and the resentment towards people in leadership. And for good reasons. For a lot of the reasons, they're good reasons, So there's definitely some work there. Around the state, there's going to be some changes there too. There's going to have to be. But there are some areas that did pretty well. So you build on those areas. Certainly I'm happy about Shane Hernandez getting reelected. Certainly John Riley. There's Matt Maddock won. There's some other folks that you can be happy about, but certainly there's a lot of work to do. So that's what we got to do. Now, in terms of Campaign for Liberty, we're still here. You're still here. Hats off to all of you for still being here, for still believing. Dr. Paul would be proud. I see his picture back there with Dave and Glenna, and this is what he had envisioned for all of us, that we keep this going, because as he said, elections are short-term sprints. But, maintaining what we have here in this constitutional republic, that's a long-term marathon. And, some of you are going to kind of, maybe step back a little bit, take a breather, come back. There'll be a lot of that back and forth. Some new people are going to come back, or come on board, I should say. And that's where recruiting comes in. That's where spreading the message comes in. I can tell you that as recent as last week, I spoke at Wayne State University, and there was a group, a political science group, a student political science group that had put together, and they were just talking about the propositions. But the point is that when I walked into the room, they all had this thought about me as a Republican. And they were prepared to be defensive. And, you could have the people, folding their arms, and they didn't want to listen. And then I started to speak about our issues. I started to speak about liberty. I started to speak about what that means. And that they were expecting me to say, Prop 1, we're going to vote it down, and nobody should be allowed to smoke this stuff and heal themselves. No. And I didn't say any of that. Now, I'm not happy about the language. The language in Prop 1, I think, left a lot to be desired. So, but that being said, certainly is better than throwing people in 12 by 12 cages over a victimless crime, right? So, and then there were some other general thoughts. But the point is by the end of the night, I started to win some of them over. And in fact, a few of the folks that were there were planning on voting yes on Prop 2 and 3. And after my talk, they said, I think we're going to vote against it now. So the point is that you can reach out to people with a good, solid, consistent message, and you can change their minds. You can win them over. Because they've been really bombarded with a lot of false ideas about, what many Republicans really are and what they really are all about. And then, of course, we come around and we come around with a consistent message, and they hear that message and they like that message, and they come around with us. So it's our job to message in a much better way than the Republican leadership has been doing. And that really falls on us. So I plan on continuing to do that. I plan on putting together a couple of areas where we can work on in the new legislature, where I think we've got a good opportunity to make some ground and to get forth some legislation that really has our best interests at heart by defending our liberties always. And I think we have those opportunities, and so we'll do that. We'll go on offense. Why wait? Why sit back and wait for something nasty to come at us and then be on defense for 2 years? Let's go on offense. So that's yes. Oh, sorry. Yeah, you look like you had a question. Anyway. Yeah, so that's my thought on that. I did take a few notes down because there was a couple other things I wanted to go into. Not sure which way I want to go with this. Well, nationally, obviously, you can only have an effect here in Michigan. I mean, obviously, we can take a look at the blue trickle that we got. It wasn't so much a blue tsunami like they predicted, but we obviously, I think what yesterday demonstrated is we're up against messaging. And the media really out there is just awful. And on too many levels. Even Fox News, I can't rely on Fox News for a whole lot. We've really got to start relying on our own messaging, getting our, what Shane's doing and some others, figuring out ways of messaging the truth to people in our way, and I think there's going to be pockets of people that are always going to be hungry for that message, but you're always going to have people that are just comfortable being in the belly of the beast, like in Detroit, and they're always going to be comfortable with that socialist message. They're always going to be comfortable with bread and circuses, because we've trained them that way. And it's going to take a lot to untrain them. Once you get that comfortable, numb feeling of the government just taking care of you, it's hard to want to pick yourself up. And I'm seeing that in Detroit. Now, it's happening in some small pockets, but just not enough. And you see that in the state. I mean, certainly John James won, 66 counties. right? 62 or 66, whatever it was, and just lost 20 or so. But then lost because the bulk of the population are in these other counties. Tammy Carlone, many people know Tammy. She won, I think, every other county except when Detroit came in. And now we have 2 Democrats, and I've met one of them, and I really just shake my head as to why and how some of these people got themselves elected, because some of them really intellectually leave a lot to be desired. Probably very nice people, but you just shake your head at some of these people who are now serving in public office, now making decisions about our money, about our freedoms. That really frightens me with some of these folks that got elected. And then nationally, of course, you know, every time Ms. Cortez opens her mouth, I want to choke on my own spit. It's just mind-numbing. And then, of course, we have a few of those folks right here in our state. So, but what we have to focus on is our state. That's all we can do. I can't worry about national stuff. That's going to play out the way it's going to play out. I have to worry about what we have here. And certainly you folks having stuck through this, many of you have been around since day one, and you're still here. God bless you. So, and I know that there's some other folks that aren't here tonight that are a part of your group, and I know that this has been always a strong group. So God bless you. But you got a question?
This question is about election fraud. Going way back to 2012 and Campaign for Liberty in Wayne County, I can remember a lot of people came out for both Tea Party rally with us. Tony DeMont spent a lot of time vetting Ruth Johnson on what, about voter fraud, an ID, you need to have an address, get registered, etc. Get the debt off of the rolls. Now look at this election, and nothing that I voted for came in. I mean, some woman that came from out of state and ran in the 11th district, spent millions of dollars and won.
Yeah.
Leonard lost. Mary Trader Lang had a great idea about cleaning up elections. And how did this happen? I mean, I can't believe this election is fair and that the voting. I think that they program these machines. They can't be, like Bishop lost. These people, some of these people are basically couldn't rally anybody.
Shooty effect, though. It's the shooty effect.
But the direct answer to that is I don't want to get into conspiracies about rigging machines, because if that's the case, if we can prove that and that's the case, then it's
the case. I mean,
it's
to work on this kind of.
Yeah. Well, demographics change. Certainly the makeup of Oakland County has changed since we started this in 2007. I mean, certainly there's people that have, unfortunately passed away, moved out. Some new people have moved in. New local leadership. I understand that your county commission, was it? Went Democrat, So there's changes that have been happening slowly, but certainly it didn't help that the Republican organization, and arguably this was one of the strongest Republican organizations in the Midwest for years. And because of egos and money, you have people that come in that are principled, like you folks, and some others that aren't here tonight, that just said, hey, we need to stand for something a little bit more consistent, and we're not seeing that in leadership, and correctly calling them out, and then you get chastised and ripped up for it. Now, I get that politics is a full contact sport. I get that, we get there, and if we don't bring the numbers to these conventions, and I'm just using the conventions as an example because, all of you have been a part of those things, but if we don't show up when we need to, we lose, and we correctly lose. But that doesn't make them right, either. So, but I also believe you reap what you sow. And they have sown this for quite a while, and now they're reaping this. And it didn't have to be this way. We didn't have to lose the governorship. We didn't have to lose the Attorney General, the Secretary of State, even in some of these House seats that we lost. I understand Laura Cox lost, I'm not... Whether you're a fan of her or not, it was a seat that was traditionally easy. The 11th district was traditionally easy, the 8th district, right? There's arguably some strife going on in Macomb County. I was talking to somebody that's sort of on one side of that fight that's been going on in Macomb County for a while, and they said, we just picked up our chips and left. Let the folks on the other side run it for a while, and they're, and the excuse is that many of the donors and the activists and the people that were involved just simply walked away, and so none of this had to happen, But
thing might happen now. Do people like Lena spending their own money and facing, all this outside money? They might pick up their chips. How are we going to get on the good people who run if this is what they're facing?
Well, that starts with leadership. That starts with obviously understanding that leadership is going to have to change, messaging is going to have to change, direction is going to have to change, all of it. And I think they see the writing on the wall. But whether or not they'll go willingly, I don't know. But you cannot blame anybody but ourselves for this. Democrats had a message. Yeah, they did what Democrats do. Whatever, I can't control that. But what happened here with us, the implosion in this party, we saw this coming for a while, and now here it is. We're seeing the results of it, really. But we've mourned about this for a long time, haven't we? Yes?
Okay, my worst fear is kind of coming to fruition where the Republicans are going to control the House and the Senate next year, and that national popular vote bill is still active.
Yep.
I know Tom Leonard gave assurances that it wouldn't get picked up, that it was dead and in the water, but now he doesn't have a job, he's not the Attorney General, and it's still kind of out there in the ether. My biggest fear is that it'll get ran through during lame duck. So what do you suggest that we do to keep the focus on this issue and ultimately defeat it and let it go through this year?
Yeah, so he did give assurances, but of course there's a lot of money that was poured in on national popular vote, and of course if that happens, you can just put it in the oven, bake it, kiss it goodbye. I mean, if they get that to go through, I'll tell you an interesting stat. When Obama won the first time, and I believe the number I read was 3,200 plus counties in the United States, and Obama took 800 plus, whatever it was. Second election, that number dropped down to 700 plus, whatever it was. Hillary Clinton's election, that number dropped into the sixes, and last night it was in the high fives of Democrat counties, right? That went Democrat, right? So what that means is that the popular vote would assure that elections would be determined by a handful of counties out of 3,200 plus, whatever that is, instead of what we have with the Electoral College, okay? And that's the scary part about it. So Michigan would effectively be a flyover state forever. They would focus their efforts on New York, California, Chicago, Illinois, Texas, maybe Florida, maybe Pennsylvania. That'd be it. And the rest of us wouldn't matter. So that's the importance of this. And you see with the gerrymandering issue that just passed, which I expect that there will be court fights on that. I don't think this is over with yet. But you see what the plan was. Get the Democrat in the Secretary of State's position, get this gerrymandering thing passed. We've got 2020 coming around when redistricting happens. This will happen all over, right? And then put up a candidate for 2020 and take back the White House, and then they'll just have it all. That's the plan, And now you have people that are pushing this national popular vote idea. And here in Michigan, of course, we have Saul the Nuisance that's been pushing this forever and a day, and he's still pushing it, and claims to be Republican, conservative. He even told me once he was libertarian at heart. Whatever. They're all constitutionalists when they talk to us, right? And then they go vote, and then there's something else. So this is what we're up against. So yes, there will be a short session, I believe, in November coming up in a few weeks. So we have to keep a sharp eye about lame duck. Now, Could they pass a few things just to piss off the Whitmer administration? What that would be, I don't know. Would they do that? I don't know. I just know that we have that fight that we have to focus on. And so, yes, we have a few weeks left. And we really need to just stay on the message about this. So as we're leading up to the session coming back, we need to ramp up the messaging, the discussion on social media, your contact list, and letting people know that this is all part of the grand scheme, if you will. And while we have the Republican legislature, we can't let that go through. Now, my hope is, with your help and with the help of other activists in the Tea Parties and the other areas around the state, is that we continue to amp up the pressure on this issue so that they know that we're still out here. We know that you still have the legislature, but in the House just barely. Don't think that we're just going to sit back and just forget about it and you guys will do your job. We know that that's not the case. We know that if we don't stay on their backs, they can succumb to money, they can succumb to lobbyists, all sorts of different factors that are up there in Lansing when we're not there, because we can't be there all the time. I can't be there all the time. But that's all we can do, is just to continue to pressure them and to inform other folks that maybe are not quite aware of this. Maybe they've heard of the issue, but they're not really on top of this issue the way we are. Bullet point messaging, point by point, about why this is awful and what the effects of this will be years to come should this go through, and how it will affect them. And really, you could message to Democrats as well. Because, Michigan would not only be a flyover state for Republicans, it would be for Democrats. And let's face it, yeah, they tend to rally around each other a little bit more than Democrats do. But you know what? There was still that Hillary camp, and there was still that Bernie camp. So, it would still affect a portion of Democrats as well. So you could message on that point too, that it affects them as well. Maybe they get a candidate that the establishment wants on their side that they don't want. You remember how you were treated by the Democrat establishment and the Clinton camp when you got shut out if you were a Bernie supporter. So there's certainly, you could appeal to people that way on this national popular vote issue. Yes.
Is there any kind of rumor of a challenge to this one proposal where you can walk into a polling place on the day of an election and register and then vote?
Yeah, I'm told that.
Do you know which counties overwhelmingly voted for this proposal?
Well, obviously, the heavily populated areas of Oakland County, Wayne County, Genesee County. Obviously, they went the way of the messaging, because look, here's another area where the state dropped the ball. They could have organized on this long before the primaries. They saw this coming. They knew that there was $250 million plus of Obama money and Eric Holder money that was being pumped in from out of state to market this issue with some very clever marketing lingo. Citizens, not politicians. That sounds great, doesn't it? That, if I didn't know any better, I might get excited for that, right? But the reality is that now we have a new bureaucracy made up of 13 selected people, not people who were elected and held accountable directly to you. And depending on who the Secretary of State is, you could make the argument that now we went from 110 people who were accountable to you, dividing up these lines and then approved by the governor, to one Secretary of State choosing 13 individuals who may or may not be Republican, may or may not be Democrat, and just left out the Libertarians. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, they're now a major party, arguably, but they're on the ballot by name. They weren't included by name on this proposal, which is now, until it gets challenged, we'll see what happens in the courts. I don't know, but this is what we're faced with now. And really, there's no statistical data to show that the lines will be drawn any better or any worse with a citizen group than there would be the legislature. I don't like gerrymandering. I don't think you like it either. But there's certain aspects to this that aren't going to change with this passage. The portion of the Federal Voting Rights Act, the majority-minority issue, that's not going to be that. This doesn't address that. So, yes.
Speaking of districts, why don't they just start? Every time I tell this to somebody, they say it's fair, but nobody wants to subscribe to. Start at the extreme southwest corner of the state and go by election districts, precinct districts, and build up a square box. When it gets big enough, that's one district. Then you go to the next one, the next, and just go that way. That way there's no people involved, and the chips will fall the way they were meant to fall.
Those discussions are going to have to be had now with this, assuming this sticks and we go with this. I don't know what this process is going to be exactly. We're going to have to all be involved and watch this carefully. This really could set back a lot of what we've done for the past 10 years. If it just holds this way and they divide it up in a way that's not fair, or I should say is benefiting Democrats, which I'm just going to have to go along and presume that that's what this is about, because, there was so much Democrat influence on this. And you see this throughout the states. Now, did the Republicans ask for this? Maybe they gerrymandered so much that it pissed off Democrats, and now they felt like they had to come back with this. It's almost like you shoot the pendulum so far one way that the natural reaction is that it's going to go so far the other way, and we saw that with right to work. Right to work wasn't even on Snyder's mind. If it wasn't for Bob King trying to enshrine it in the state constitution, you might not have had that fight. It might not have passed, because they weren't thinking about that. But the reaction of going all the way to the left was to come and swing all the way back to the right, and that's probably why we got that. So, it's certainly there's corruption, and certainly there's garbage that goes on both sides. I mean, we've obviously been spending most of our time fighting bad Republicans, and our job has always been to replace bad leadership with good leadership, and it's still that way. And the war is not over until you quit and go home. There's battles that are going to be won and battles that are going to be lost. We're going to have ups, we're going to have downs. In some ways, we had downs yesterday. In some ways, I'm not really all that upset about some of the Republicans that lost, because they were awful Republicans. I'm really not upset. I'm trying very hard to be upset. I woke up, God, I should be upset. Maybe I'll punch myself and maybe I'll be upset. And I went, no, I'm not upset, because we can do better. It gives us an opportunity to do better. So I'm not really upset too much. I'm upset that we have some pretty awful Democrats. I'm upset that we didn't put up better quality candidates. I'm upset that the grassroots wasn't paid attention to early on, before the primaries, before this year, before this election cycle, so that we could put forth better candidates. Or at least the candidates that went up, maybe the messaging could have been better. Maybe they could have ran on something that was more consistent to the Constitution and those issues that we care about. I'm constantly hearing from candidates about, I want to serve the public. It's about serving Michigan. It's not about me. It's about all of you. I hear this constant dribble, but never once do I hear, it's about me defending your rights. It's about me defending your liberties. It's about me defending the Constitution. I don't hear that enough. And when you don't hear that out of the very first couple of lines that comes out of their mouth, to me that means they just don't care. So at that point, what's the difference? If I go over a cliff on a bus, do you think I care if the bus has an R or a D painted on the side? I'm still going over. And we've been saying this for 10 years, and it's like, at what point did they get it? But you keep plugging along, because if we walk away, they have it all. So I plug along. There's going to be months and maybe weeks and maybe some days, maybe some moments where I just say, I'm just not into this right now. I'm going to back away for a little bit. Then I come back. And I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be here. So be warned. When you don't do right, you're going to hear from us. This is an opportunity for all of us, all of the different groups, the gun groups, the Tea Party groups, what's left of them, even the Trump groups, the Campaign for Liberty groups, all of us to galvanize together, come up with some common areas where we agree on, and galvanize ourselves, regroup, rally, and fight for those things. Stay with it. Because ultimately, the Democrat liberal policies are doomed to fail. The cultural left is dying, whether they know it or not. Those ideas are not working. Globally, we're seeing it all over. We're seeing the fall of these ideas. They're destined to fall. But who's going to be there to pick up the pieces when it falls? That's the key. Now, I'm not going to walk away, because when it falls, I don't want bad leadership in the Republican Party picking up the pieces and putting forth a little less bad ideas, right? We have to be there to pick up the pieces and show them the right path, show them the rightful remedy.
Amen, bro.
Correct? All right, so I probably gabbed longer than I should have. Vince, go ahead.
Sure. So in the 2016 election, the Green Party candidate Jill Stein filed for a recount after the election. And I was thinking, I looked at the Secretary of State website, and Tom Leonard was ahead with one county left to go. John James was within 0.2% with one county to go. Do you think it might be useful to go after a recount, or is that futile?
Well, that's really up to the campaigns and what they have in their coffers and what they're willing to spend and what if they think that something positive would come out of it. I mean, certainly there's some garbage that goes on with the AV ballots over in Detroit at Cobo Hall there. I mean, I saw it firsthand. Yeah. You had folks that couldn't even agree on a total count, much less getting in there to actually count the votes or recount. So that's going to depend on them.
Totals and registered voters in Detroit.
Yeah. There's
in Cleveland.
Sure. There is, but we can't. But we can't make that as an excuse, because if you have good candidates, you can win over independents. I'm not trying to win over hardcore Democrats. You can forget them. They're never coming your way. Forget it.
This time
But-
they had great candidates, and they had really bad candidates, and poured all this money in and still won.
Well, let me correct you there. We had decent candidates. I wouldn't call them great candidates.
No.
They had awful candidates. But they had a plan. They had a better plan, and they were unified, and they executed it flawlessly. We didn't. Where was the nerd fund? Where was Snyder? If he's this Republican and he raised all this money, where was that help? Right? So, but again, I can't rest on, well, it was the rigged, it was the Democrats, it was this. All we can do is look at ourselves, and there's a lot to fix in this party. But besides the party, we are Campaign for Liberty first and foremost. And what we do at Campaign for Liberty first and foremost is to replace bad leaders with good leaders and hold the good leaders accountable to our values. We know what those values are, and I'm not going anywhere. I don't want you to go anywhere. There'll be more coming out in the next few weeks as to exactly what we're going to be doing with the two issues that we started early in the year, and then leading into next session, what we'll be working on then. So with that, if there's no other questions, I thank you. It's good to see a lot of you again. Thanks for having me.